She kissed me good night, just as she always did, her lips brushing mine with a kind of familiarity that came from years of practice. It was a gesture so effortless, so habitual, that it felt almost like a small, secret rebellion. The way she pretended everything was normal, even though the envelope hidden beneath her pillow told a different story. If I hadn't known any better, I might have believed her. As she drifted off to sleep beside me, her soft, steady breathing filling the room, I stared at the ceiling, my mind swirling with thoughts I could barely contain. The bitterness slithered in my stomach like a snake, hot and venomous. 4 months now, doubts had been creeping into my mind, nagging thoughts that seemed to appear in the quiet moments. The late meetings she would suddenly have, the suspicious texts that flickered on her phone. But nothing tangible. Nothing real. That was until last week when Jeremy, my old friend, unwittingly provided me with the evidence I had been too afraid to seek. He claimed to have seen her across town, laughing at a cafe with another man. Her hand casually resting on his wrist, her face glowing with something more than just the comfort of familiarity. The look in her eyes was different. It wasn't the look she gave me. Jeremy had snapped a photo, sending it to me with a note, an asterisk next to it. I could hardly breathe when I saw it. I spent that night consumed by a storm of confusion and disbelief, trying to convince myself that it was all just a misunderstanding. But as I dug deeper, more lies emerged, faster than I could process. Bank statements, receipts from restaurants I hadn't been to, a lingerie receipt from a boutique she had always said was too expensive, and then a hotel stay on a Wednesday. But the real dagger came when I found her phone, carelessly left on the kitchen counter. The text exchange was brief but damning. From someone named Claire, the message read, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." The name was a placeholder, but the tone, the timing, it left no room for doubt. I knew then what I had to do. I didn't confront her right away. That would have been too simple, too satisfying in a way that wouldn't make her truly feel the weight of what she had done.
Well,
I wanted her to understand the gravity of it, to feel the destruction she had wrought in our lives. I spent the next few days planning, carefully devising my next move. And that's how I ended up slipping the envelope beneath her pillow. Inside I had printed every damning detail. Text messages, receipts, photographs of her with him, and a final note written in my own hand. "Good night, sweetheart. I'm done being your fool." The next morning came slowly. I woke before she did and pretended to check my phone, all the while watching her. She lay there peacefully, her hair a tangled mess on the pillow, her face calm, unburdened by the storm brewing in my chest. She was still so beautiful it made my stomach twist. When she finally stirred, stretching lazily, I forced myself to return her smile. She reached under the pillow for her phone, but her fingers brushed the envelope instead. Her brow furrowed, and she pulled it out, eyeing it with confusion. "What's this?" she asked, her voice soft. She opened it slowly, almost nervously, and began to read. I watched her face as the color drained from her cheeks. Her breath quickened, and I could see the tremble in her hands as she flipped through the papers, the sound of them crinkling in the silence. By the time she reached the final page, her hands were shaking so violently that the papers threatened to tear. "Mark, it's not what it looks like," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Oh, is it not?" I replied, my words laced with venom, every syllable dripping with the truth I had so carefully gathered. Her eyes widened in panic, tears welling up in them. She looked at me, her face contorting with the desperate plea of someone caught in the act. "I can explain," she said, her voice barely a whisper, but I didn't want to hear it. The lies had already been exposed. I couldn't help myself. A laugh escaped my lips, sharp and bitter, slicing through the silence. It made her wince, her face tightening with confusion and fear. "Oh, I'm sure you can explain," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "Go ahead, Claire. Or should I call you by your real name, Emily? Maybe cheating wife would work better." Her face crumpled, a tear slipping down her cheek as she stammered, trying to find her words. "Mark, I can explain. It didn't mean anything." I stood up, looming over her, my anger giving way to an almost cold clarity. You've been sneaking around, lying to my face, spending our money on hotel rooms and dinners with another man. What part of that doesn't appear to be true? My words were like daggers, each one cutting deeper. She reached for my arm, her hands trembling. Her lips parted, but they moved like a fish gasping for air, desperate for words that couldn't undo what she had done. Without a second thought, I jerked away. "Don't touch me," I snapped, my voice ice cold. "Not after this." "Mark," she cried, the pleading in her voice thick with desperation. "Please, I love you." It meant nothing, I swear. "You have to believe me." I shook my head, the pain of her betrayal turning into a cold rage. "You can't minimize this," I said, my voice hard and final. "You wrote this story, Emily. And now you're going to face the consequences of your own choices." She looked at me, her face wet with tears, her voice shaking as she tried to comprehend what was happening. What do you mean? What are you going to do?" I walked over to the dresser, my movements deliberate, and picked up the second letter. Divorce paperwork. I threw it onto the bed, the sound of the papers hitting the mattress sharp in the otherwise still room. "I had them drawn up yesterday," I said, my tone unwavering. "Sign them or don't, it doesn't matter. I'm leaving, and you're going to have to explain to everyone why our marriage fell apart." She collapsed onto the bed, her sobs heavy and racking, but there was no sympathy in my heart, only grim satisfaction. 4 years I had been the dependable husband, the one who kept everything together, the one who was always there. This was my reward for staying loyal while she pursued her own desires, for turning a blind eye to the lies. I picked up the bag I had packed earlier and made my way toward the door, but before I could leave, I turned back one last time. "I've already sent copies of everything to your parents," I said, my voice biting. I thought they'd appreciate knowing the truth about their beautiful daughter. Her head jerked up, her eyes wide with fear. In that moment, I could see everything unraveling, and I knew it was too late for her to stop it. The weeks that followed were nothing short of a spectacle. The world she had carefully built around herself, the illusion she had maintained, was crumbling with each passing day. She had no one to blame but herself. Her parents called me, shocked and apologetic, offering to help in any way they could. Her friends, those who hadn't known or had turned a blind eye to her behavior, reached out, offering their support, their sympathy. But Emily remained silent. She withdrew into herself, too proud or too ashamed to speak up. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that her lover had abandoned her once he realized what she had lost. Her reputation, her social standing, the respect of everyone who had once admired her. And as for me, I felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom. It wasn't easy, not by any means. The hurt lingered, but with it came a sense of liberation I hadn't realized I'd been craving. Emily's betrayal was a turning point in my life. Yes, it hurt deeply. But it was also a stark reminder that I deserved more than the lies and deceit. And now I could finally pursue that. I could move forward, unburdened by her dishonesty and the weight of our broken marriage. For her, though, the consequences would be much harder to bear. And I believed that was the most satisfying form of retribution.